The HOA built 96 homes on my land, not next to it, on it. 47 acres of Texas prairie my grandfather bought in 1943, land that still smells like mesquite smoke every 4th of July, land where I learned to mend fence at 12 years old. I watched bulldozers chew through the south pasture. The HOA president pulled up in her white Lexus, smiled and said, "Eminent domain, sweetheart. You'll thank us when property values go up." She'd moved here from Connecticut 5 years ago. I'd been here my whole life. My father's last words, "Don't let anybody make you small." So I didn't fight the bulldozers. I let them finish. Every foundation, every frame, every granite countertop. Then I walked into court with an 80-year-old deed and watched their lawyer's face go white. What would you do if an HOA tried this? Comment below. I'll read everyone. Where are you watching from? Drop your state. This could happen to you. My name's Grady Thornhill. 58 years old, third-generation Texan, retired diesel mechanic. Up until 4 months ago, I thought I understood how the world worked. Pay your taxes, respect your neighbors, and nobody messes with land that's got your name on the deed. Turns out I was adorably naive. Let me back up. My grandfather came down from Appalachia in 1943 with $800 cash and bought 47 acres of Texas scrub oak prairie. People thought he was insane. It was rattlesnakes and dust storms back then. But he cleared it with a mule named Jasper and a chainsaw that could have doubled as a boat anchor. Built a house. Raised 5 kids. Every 4th of July, we'd roast a whole pig over mesquite wood. You could smell that smoke a mile out. Best smell on earth. My father inherited the land. Taught me to mend barbed wire fence when I was 12. My hands bled the first summer, calloused over by the second. 2 years ago, he died. Cancer, the quick kind. Last thing he said in the hospital, "Don't let anybody make you small, Grady. That land's got our sweat in the soil." I'm divorced. 2 grown kids scattered out of state. I live quiet now. Lease 20 acres to an organic farming co-op. Keep a machine shop in the barn. No HOA. No neighbors complaining about my truck being the wrong shade of primer gray. Just cicadas in August so loud you'd swear they were mocking you. 4 months ago, I found orange survey stakes hammered into my south pasture. I called the county. They said a residential plat was under review, adjacent to my property. I figured it was the parcel next door, owned by some California investor who'd never seen Texas dirt. Didn't worry. 2 weeks later, I heard diesels. I drove down and found a bulldozer chewing through my land. The operator, sunburned kid, maybe 25, showed me a site plan from Cranston Development LLC. The boundary line cut straight through my pasture. I drove to the construction trailer. That's where I met Delia Cranston, early 50s, yoga-toned, salon blonde bob, white Lexus SUV with a vanity plate. Sewa Prez. She stepped out holding a latte like she was posing for her own Instagram story. "Can I help you?" Smiled like I'd interrupted her very important day. I explained the dozer was on my property. She didn't flinch, tapped her tablet, showed me a document, right-of-way agreement and easement transfer, claimed it was signed by the previous landowner, said the county had used eminent domain to consolidate parcels for water and sewer lines. "Your deed's under review, Mr. Thornhill. You'll be compensated fairly. Property values in Clearfield Estates start at $420,000. You should be thanking us." She said it like she'd just solved world hunger. I stood there, boots grinding caliche rock, diesel smoke choking the air. I wanted to tell her my grandfather cleared this land when her grandparents were probably sipping martinis in Connecticut. But all I said was, "I never signed anything." She handed me her card. "Clearfield Estates HOA, where luxury meets community. Our attorney will reach out. Have a blessed day, sweetheart." She drove off, leaving a dust cloud and the faint scent of vanilla latte. That night, I pulled my deed from the bank. Clear title, no easements, no liens. 79 years of unbroken ownership. But when I looked out my window, I could see work lights glowing on the horizon. They'd already graded 2 acres, poured foundation forms for 6 homes. They weren't waiting for paperwork. They were betting I'd be too tired, too poor, or too scared to fight. Big mistake. Week 8. The letters started. Not polite letters. Legal letters. The kind that come in thick envelopes with law firm logos embossed in gold. The kind that make your stomach knot before you even open them. First one, Dallas law firm. 3 names I couldn't pronounce. Cease and desist. Said I was interfering with lawful construction, and they'd sue me for tortious interference, damages, attorney's fees, basically everything short of my firstborn. I Googled tortious interference. Sounds like a medieval torture device. Turns out it just means I was in their way. Second letter, same week. Invoice from Clearfield Estates HOA. $18,000 for special assessments. Roads and sewer lines they claim now served my land, due in 30 days. I'd never joined an HOA. Didn't know you could be billed by one you never signed up for. Apparently Delia Cranston thinks bylaws are suggestions. Third letter, County Zoning Office. My land was under review for rezoning to residential planned development. Public hearing in 6 weeks. Fourth letter, title company I'd never heard of asking me to cure defects in my deed. Didn't say what defects, just that they existed. I spent 3 nights Googling terms until 2 a.m. quiet title. Plat Amendment. Eminent domain under Local Government Code 212.0101. Real laws twisted into weapons. I'm a mechanic. I can rebuild a Cummins diesel blindfolded. But this? Fighting smoke with a wrench? I called 3 lawyers. First 2 wanted $15,000 retainers. Said it'd take years. I just buried my father. Didn't have $15,000. Third call, Jolene Pritchett. She worked out of an old Victorian downtown, paint peeling, porch sagging. I walked up and found her in a rocking chair, cowboy boots on the rail, cigarette smoke curling in the October air. You Grady? Yes, ma'am. Don't ma'am me. I'm 62, not dead. Come inside. Silver braid, turquoise rings, West Texas twang. Office smelled like burnt coffee and leather-bound law books. She listened to my story, flipped through the letters, and laughed at the title company one. This is weapons-grade horseshit, she said. Pardon my French. They're betting you're too scared or too broke to fight back. Can you help? $5,000 flat to file suit and scare 'em. After that, contingency, you don't pay unless we win. I shook her hand. Jolene explained something I'd never heard of, a quiet title suit. Sounds boring, but it's basically a legal grenade. You file it when someone claims they own your land, and it forces a court to decide who's actually right. She said once we filed, she'd also record something called a lease pendens on their plat, fancy Latin for lawsuit pending. I remembered reading once that banks hate that phrase because it means the property's toxic until the fight's over. Turns out that's exactly the point. She filed within a week, named Cranston Development and the HOA as defendants. Within 72 hours, Cranston's construction loans froze. No bank would touch a house sitting on land with a cloud over the title. I felt hope for the first time in 2 months. Lasted 5 days. Delia posted on the Clearfield Junction Facebook group, 4,000 members. My ex-wife's sister sent screenshots, heartbroken to share that a local landowner is blocking 96 families from their dream homes. Greed over community. Praying for resolution. Photo attached, my property. Overgrown fence, rusted equipment, peeling barn. Caption, this is what stands between progress and our children's future. Comments poured in. Sue him. Eminent domain exists for a reason. Typical old rancher holding us hostage. 3 brand new anonymous accounts claimed my land had environmental hazards and illegal dumping. No proof, just digital arson. My phone wouldn't stop. Angry strangers. Reporters asking for comment. The co-op nervously asked if they should pause the lease. But here's the thing about getting publicly attacked. You find out who your people are. That night, someone created a GoFundMe I didn't ask for. Jolene's paralegal, turns out. Help Grady fight HOA land grab. Raised $4,000 in 48 hours. Messages flooded in. My HOA fined me for planting roses. I'm with you. Don't you dare give up. Clearfield Junction, sending $50. Make 'em pay. I sat on my porch watching work lights glow on the horizon. Generators humming. Cold wind carrying the metallic smell of fresh concrete. Cicadas long gone for the season. I thought about my father's last words. Don't let anybody make you small. I wasn't backing down. Not for Delia, not for Brock, not for their army of lawyers. I called Jolene. We're going scorched earth, I said. She laughed. Took you long enough. Week 14. Cranston Development filed a motion to dismiss my lawsuit. I was in Jolene's office when she printed it out. 63 pages. She read the first 10, then slid it across her desk without a word. They'd attached a corrected deed. Claimed my grandfather's original 47 acres had been subdivided back in 1987, and that my family only owned the northern half, 22 acres, not 47. The document had my father's signature at the bottom, except my father never signed it. I knew that signature. I'd watched him sign birthday cards, tax returns, the back of my high school diploma when I graduated. This one was close, damn close, but the capital T in Thornhill had a loop he never made. My father wrote fast, impatient. This signature was too careful. It's a forgery, I said. Jolene nodded. I know, but proving it's going to cost money. She explained we'd need a forensic document examiner, someone who could analyze ink, paper, pressure points, $8,000 minimum, and the notary who'd supposedly witnessed the signature, dead, died in 2003, convenient. I'd already spent $5,000 on Jolene. The GoFundMe had helped, but I was tapped out. Couldn't mortgage the land, title was still clouded from the lawsuit. I sat in my truck outside her office, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching a Dairy Queen across the street. Wondered if this was how my grandfather felt in 1959 when the state took his land for a highway. Powerless, small. Then my phone rang. Number I didn't recognize. Probably another angry stranger telling me I was ruining the town. Mr. Thornhill, this is Remy Callahan. I'm a reporter with the Hill Country Beacon. Got your number from the county clerk's office. Sorry to bother you. I almost hung up. I talked to 3 reporters already. They all wanted the same story. Stubborn old man versus progress. I'm not interested, I said. I don't think you're stubborn, Remy said. I think Brock Cranston's done this before. That got my attention. Remy was 45, worked for the Alt Weekly that covered 3 counties. He'd been digging into Cranston development for a separate story about zoning corruption and stumbled onto a pattern. 3 other towns, same playbook. Cranston would buy cheap land, get it rezoned through friendly county commissioners, build subdivisions, then right before the first home sold, there'd be a title dispute with a neighboring landowner. Every time, Cranston settled quietly, paid just enough to make the problem disappear. He's banking on you folding, Remy said. If you don't, I think this whole thing collapses. What do you need from me? Let me write the real story. I'll dig into his finances, his permits, everything. But I need you to go public, fully public. I thought about Delia's Facebook post, the angry calls, the way the cashier at the Exxon wouldn't meet my eyes anymore. Then I thought about my father, about Jasper the mule and mesquite smoke and 80 years of sweat in the soil. Do it, I said. Jolene had another idea. She'd reached out to the Clearfield Historical Society, a group of retired volunteers who mapped old land grants like some people do crossword puzzles. One of them, Mabel Ortiz, was obsessed with property records the way my ex-wife was obsessed with true crime podcasts. Mabel was 73, bifocals on a beaded chain, kept her files in a dusty gymnasium the town let them use. She had hundreds of boxes full of deeds, plats, and tax rolls going back to 1880. The place smelled like old paper and lavender sachets. She'd found something. Mabel called me on a Saturday morning, voice shaking. She'd cross-referenced my family's deed with the county's original 1943 land grant maps. Everything matched. Continuous ownership. No subdivisions in 1987. But then she'd found something else. A condemnation notice from 1959. The state had seized 21 acres from my grandfather to build a highway expansion. Paid him $1,200. Here's the kicker. The highway was never built. Project canceled in 1961, and in 1962 the land was supposed to revert back to my grandfather. Standard when eminent domain falls through. I'd read about cases like this in one of Jolene's law books, situations where government seizures got reversed, but the paperwork got lost in the shuffle. Except nobody recorded the reversal. When the county digitized records in 1995, they missed it. 21 acres just vanished from the system. On paper, it looked like vacant state land. Legally, still ours. Mabel pulled out a 1962 plat map, yellowed and brittle as old skin, traced the boundary with her finger. This section here, she said, that's yours, and that's where they're building. I looked at the map. My chest went tight. The 21 missing acres were exactly where Cranston had poured foundations for 32 homes. Homes they'd already pre-sold for $420,000 each. Jolene did the math. $13.4 million in sales that couldn't legally close. She leaned back, grinning like a coyote. Grady, they just built 32 houses on land they don't own. Texas law says when you build on someone else's property without permission, the landowner can claim the improvements. Accession, it's called. You could own 32 brand new houses. I didn't want 32 houses, but I wanted them to know they'd made a mistake. Don't tell them yet, Jolene said. Let them finish. The deeper they dig, the harder they fall. I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. Let them finish, I agreed. Week 18. I got 3 code enforcement citations in 5 days. First one, unpermitted structures. They meant the storage shed my grandfather built in 1955. Corrugated tin roof, wooden frame, still solid as the day he finished it. Apparently it needed a retroactive permit. Second citation, agricultural use in residentially zoned area, the organic co-op's lease. Except my land was still zoned agricultural. They were citing me for violating a zone change that hadn't happened yet. Third citation, and this one made me laugh until I wanted to punch something. Failure to maintain fence to HOA standards. I wasn't in an HOA. My land had never been in an HOA, but apparently Delia had decided that didn't matter. All three citations came from the same county inspector, a guy named Derek Pullman. Took me one Google search to find out he was married to Delia's younger sister. Jolene filed objections, but the county scheduled a zoning reclassification hearing anyway. If they rezoned my land from agricultural to residential planned development, the co-op would have to leave. And the HOA's rules could start applying through something Jolene called adjacent parcel covenants, a legal gray area, but Cranston's lawyers were betting on it. The hearing was set for a Thursday night. County Planning Board, open to the public. I walked in and knew I was in trouble. 40 people wearing matching polo shirts, white with a green logo that said Clearfield Estates Homeowners. They'd coordinated. Delia stood at the front, holding a tablet, smiling like she was hosting a charity gala. The planning board sat at a long table, 5 commissioners, all looking like they'd rather be home watching football. County attorney on the side, taking notes. Delia went first. She had a slideshow. Artist renderings of walking trails, parks, a community pool, pictures of happy families, all stock photos I noticed. Nobody actually from Clearfield Estates. She talked about planned growth and responsible development and how one holdout was jeopardizing everyone's investment. We bought here for a community, she said, voice catching just enough to sound sincere. Mr. Thornhill's refusal to cooperate is denying 96 families the future they were promised. The polo shirt crowd clapped. A few commissioners nodded. Then it was my turn. I'm not a public speaker. I rebuild engines. I don't do speeches. But Jolene had prepped me, and more importantly, Remy had helped me dig. I walked up with a folder, hands shaking just a little. Cleared my throat. My name's Grady Thornhill. I've lived on this land my whole life. My family's owned it since 1943, and I'm here to tell you that everything you just heard is based on a lie. I opened the folder. This is the right-of-way agreement Miss Cranston showed me back in August. Says it was signed in 2022, but the county clerk's office didn't receive it until September 2024, 2 months after construction started. It's backdated. I laid it on the table. The county attorney leaned forward, frowning. This is the zoning variance application Cranston Development filed in 2022. Claims my land is vacant and abandoned. Here's a photo from that same year. My barn, my truck, and a lease agreement with the co-op. Signed and notarized. I've been paying property taxes every year since I inherited, on time, full amount. I slid over tax receipts going back a decade, and here's my favorite part. I pulled out a printout of campaign finance records. Brock Cranston donated $50,000 to Commissioner Hayes' re-election campaign 1 month before this subdivision got fast-tracked through permitting. No environmental review, no public comment period. Commissioner Hayes went pale. The other 4 commissioners suddenly looked very interested in their notepads. Jolene stood up. We'd also like to submit a recording, if the board allows. Texas is a one-party consent state. If you're part of a conversation, you can record it without telling the other person. I'd learned that from one of Jolene's paralegals, kid who was still in law school but knew the statutes better than most judges. Jolene played a recording from my phone. Delia's voice, clear as day, talking to a construction foreman back in September. Just build. The old man won't do anything, and if he does, Brock's got it handled. The room went silent. Delia's face went from tan to chalk white in about 3 seconds. She looked at Brock, who was sitting in the back row. He was already heading for the exit. The county attorney cleared his throat. We're going to need to recess this hearing, pending further review. 60 days. They tabled it for 60 days. Delia stormed out without a word. I watched her through the window, stabbing at her phone in the parking lot, pacing under the streetlights. Jolene squeezed my shoulder. That, she said, is what we call drawing blood. I drove home with the windows down, cold November air cutting through the cab. For the first time in months, I felt like I was winning. Turns out that feeling lasts about as long as milk in the Texas heat. Week 20. Mabel called again. Her voice was different this time. Higher, breathless, like she'd just found a winning lottery ticket in a box of old tax forms. Grady, you need to come down here. Now. I drove to the gymnasium. Mabel was standing in the middle of a dozen open boxes, papers spread across 3 folding tables. She'd been there all night. I could tell by the empty coffee cups and the way her hair had escaped its usual neat bun. She didn't say hello, just shoved a document into my hands. 1943, your grandfather's original purchase, 47 acres, right? Right. Wrong. She grabbed another paper. Look at this, original land grant survey from the county archive, the one they did before your grandfather bought. 68 acres, not 47. I stared at the map. The boundary lines were hand-drawn in faded ink, but clear enough. The state condemned 21 acres in 1959, Mabel continued, talking fast now, excited. Highway expansion. Paid your grandfather $1,200, but the highway never got built. In 1962, the condemnation was reversed. The land reverted to your family. It's all here, signed by a county judge, filed with the state land office. So why does my deed say 47? Because when they digitized records in 1995, they only scanned what was in the active files. The reversal was in the archive. Old paper, wrong box. It got missed. Your family's owned 68 acres this whole time, you just didn't know it. My hands went cold. I looked at the survey map again. The missing 21 acres formed a wedge on the southern boundary, exactly where Cranston Development had built the densest part of the subdivision. I counted the lot numbers on their site plan, the one posted on the construction fence. 32 homes, right on top of land that was legally mine. Jolene did the math later that afternoon, sitting in her office with a calculator and a bottle of bourbon she didn't offer to share. 32 homes, pre-sold at an average of $420,000 each. That's $13.4 million in sales contracts Cranston can't close. What happens to the houses? She leaned back, grinned. You remember what I told you about accession? When someone builds on your land without permission, you can claim the improvements. It's old law. Goes back to Roman times, actually. If I plant a garden on your property, you own the tomatoes. So I'd own the houses. You'd own the houses. I sat there, staring at a water stain on her ceiling. I didn't want 32 houses. I wanted my land back. I wanted Delia and Brock to stop acting like I was invisible. But more than that, I wanted them to know they'd lost. Don't tell them yet, Jolene said. Let them finish the whole subdivision, all 96 homes. The more they invest, the worse it gets for them. When we drop this in court, it'll be nuclear. What if they find out? They won't. This reversal document's been buried for 60 years. Mabel only found it because she's got nothing better to do than read land grants from the Eisenhower administration. I thought about my father, about the barn they'd burned, about the Facebook post calling me greedy. Let them finish, I said. Jolene poured herself 2 fingers of bourbon, raised the glass. To patience. I drove home as the sun set, sky turning purple over the construction site. I could see framing crews working under floodlights, hear the rhythmic bang of nail guns echoing across the prairie. They were building fast now, trying to close sales before winter. They had no idea they were building on quicksand. Weeks 22 through 28. War room mode. Jolene rented a storage unit on the edge of town, one of those climate-controlled ones people use for old furniture and Christmas decorations. She turned it into mission control. Walls covered in timelines, deed overlays, maps marked with highlighter. Red string connecting dates like we were hunting a serial killer. In a way, I guess we were. She brought in help. First, a forensic accountant named Porter, retired IRS agent, 70 years old, bald as a cue ball, meaner than a snake in a boot. He worked for free because, in his words, I hate rich people who think they're smarter than the tax code. Porter dug through Cranston Development's shell companies like a dog after a bone. Found 2 prior bankruptcies under Brock's name, one in Oklahoma, one in Arizona. Same pattern. Buy land, build fast, sell, collapse the LLC, walk away. He'd left unpaid contractors and angry homeowners in 3 states. This guy's a roach, Porter said, and roaches don't change. Second, a land surveyor named Hatch, 60-something, missing 2 fingers from a fence post accident, still the best surveyor in 3 counties. He spent a week walking my property with GPS equipment, planting iron boundary pins at the corners, legal markers that would hold up in any court. His report was 12 pages. Bottom line, 68 acres, exactly as Mabel's documents showed. 32 homes were between 15 and 200 feet over the line. Some were barely trespassing. Some had their entire backyard on my land. Third, a title insurance investigator Jolene knew from another case. Woman named Iris, sharp as a tack, worked for one of the big national firms. She pulled Cranston's title work and found something beautiful. The title company that issued Cranston's policies knew there was a problem. Internal emails showed they'd flagged the 1962 reversal 6 months ago, but Brock had pushed them to bury it, threatened to take his business elsewhere. So they issued the policies anyway, hoping I'd never notice. That's fraud, Iris said, and my company's got deep pockets. They'll settle to avoid a lawsuit. Jolene amended our lawsuit, added the title company as a defendant, requested an immediate injunction halting all home sales, claimed damages for ongoing trespassing. Every day they built was another day of trespass. And she asked for attorney's fees under Texas law, which says if you win a property dispute, the loser pays your legal bills. She filed it on a Monday. By Wednesday, Cranston's construction loans were frozen again. While Jolene built the legal case, Remy built the public one. His article dropped in the Hill Country Beacon on a Friday morning. Clearfield's land grab, how a developer and HOA colluded to steal a family farm. 5,000 words. Interviews with contractors Brock had stiffed in Oklahoma. Copies of the backdated easement. Photos of the campaign donation to Commissioner Hayes. A sidebar explaining what eminent domain actually is and how Cranston had lied about it from day one. The kicker? Remy found 2 other families in Clearfield Junction who'd sold land to Cranston after being told their titles were clouded and they'd lose everything in court. Both families had been low income, didn't speak English as a first language. Brock had bought their land for pennies on the dollar. The story got picked up. San Antonio Express News ran it. Then Houston Chronicle. Then a Dallas TV station sent a crew. Social media exploded. #Clearfield land grab trended locally for 3 days. Delia's Instagram, once full of sponsored posts about artisan cheese boards and wine tastings, went private after the comments turned brutal. But here's the thing that surprised me. The homeowners turned. 18 families who'd bought homes in Clearfield Estates found out their titles might be worthless. They hired their own lawyer, class action against Cranston Development for fraud and misrepresentation. Separate from my case, but it added pressure. Local businesses started picking sides. The hardware store put up a sign, "We stand with Grady Thornhill." 3 restaurants banned Delia after she tried to host an HOA meeting in their private dining rooms. She'd burned too many bridges being petty about permits and parking. The organic co-op threw a farmer's market on my land, right at the property line, just to make a point. 500 people showed up. Kettle corn and smoked brisket, kids chasing chickens, a bluegrass band playing on a flatbed trailer. Delia drove by twice in her Lexus. Didn't stop, just slowed down enough for me to see her face through the window. She looked scared. I kept a daily log through all of this. Photos, timestamps, every truck that crossed my land, every permit posted on the construction fence. Jolene said it was worth $2 million in trespass damages if we went to trial. "You're building a nuke," she told me one afternoon, standing in the storage unit, surrounded by evidence. "When this goes off, there won't be anything left of them." My ex-wife called. She'd seen the news, said, "You always were too stubborn to quit." It wasn't quite a compliment, but I smiled anyway. Week 32. Brock Cranston showed up at my door. I was living in an RV parked next to where the barn used to be. Hadn't rebuilt it yet. Insurance money was tied up in legal fees. I heard a truck pull up, looked out, and saw a silver F-250 King Ranch edition, $60,000 of chrome and leather. Brock stepped out, 55, hair like a TV evangelist, boots that cost more than my first car. He smiled like we were old friends. "Grady, got a minute?" I walked outside, didn't invite him in. He didn't seem to notice. "Look," he said, "I respect what you're doing. I really do. You've made your point. But let's be adults here." He pulled an envelope from his jacket, handed it to me. Inside, a cashier's check for $3 million. "That's triple market value for your 68 acres, he said. "Plus, I'll throw in a home in Clearfield Estates, upgraded corner lot, $600,000 retail. And consulting fees, $50,000 a year for 5 years. You'd never have to work again." I looked at the check. It was real. My hands wanted to shake, but I kept them steady. "And if I say no?" Brock's smile thinned. "Litigation's expensive, Grady. Even if you win, you'll spend years collecting. I've got 9 lawyers and bankruptcy protection. You'll be 70 before you see a dime. Why put yourself through that?" I folded the envelope, walked to my RV, poured 2 glasses of iced tea, came back out, handed him one. "My grandfather cleared this land with a mule and a chainsaw," I said. "You think I'll sell it to the man who burned my barn?" Brock's smile vanished. "You can't prove that. Yet." He set the tea down on my truck's tailgate. Didn't drink it. "This is a mistake," he said. "We'll see." He left. I tore up the check, filmed it, posted it online. Caption, "Some things aren't for sale." The video got 40,000 views in 2 days. Week 34. The county building inspector showed up. Not the usual guy. This was someone new. Name tag said Pullman. Same last name as Delia's brother-in-law. Couldn't be a coincidence. He walked my property for an hour, clipboard in hand, taking photos. Then he handed me a stop work order. "For what?" I asked. "I'm not building anything." The farmer's market, unpermitted commercial activity on agriculturally zoned land. It was one event, and it's my land. Doesn't matter, you need a commercial use permit, and those take 6 months to process. The organic co-op called me that night. Panicked. They couldn't afford a legal fight with the county. If they lost the lease, they'd lose their whole season. I told them I'd handle it, but I didn't know how. That's when Ernesto Vega reached out. Ernesto was a civil engineer, 50, built like a fire plug, worked for the contractor Cranston had hired to do the subdivision's infrastructure. He'd been copied on an email chain I wasn't supposed to see, and it had been eating at him for weeks. He met me at a Whataburger off Highway 281, slid a folder across the table. "I could lose my job for this," he said, "but I can't stay quiet anymore." Inside, engineering reports showing the subdivision's sewer system had been built without county approval. The specs were outdated, pipes too narrow, grades too shallow. The system would fail within 5 years, maybe less. "Brock told me to make the numbers work," Ernesto said. "Cut costs wherever I could." I pushed back. He said if I didn't like it, I could find another job. There were emails, Brock ordering shortcuts, Brock telling Ernesto to bury the revised plans so the county wouldn't catch on. "And here's the kicker," Ernesto said. "The sewer lines run through your land. No easements, no permits, totally illegal." I looked at the maps. He was right. The main trunk line cut straight through the southern 21 acres, the ones Cranston thought were vacant state land. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've got 2 daughters," Ernesto said. "And I don't want them growing up thinking it's okay to lie and cheat as long as you're rich enough to get away with it." I shook his hand. Jolene filed the engineering reports with the county the next morning. By noon, the county had issued a stop work order on the entire subdivision, not because of my lawsuit, but because of code violations. Cranston Development scrambled, tried to fix the sewer lines. Cost $1.8 million, money they didn't have. Brock's lawyer sent a cease and desist to the county, to Ernesto, to Remy. Threatened defamation suits, interference claims, everything they could think of. Nobody cared anymore. A cable news segment picked up the story. HOA Horror Story. Developer builds on wrong land. They interviewed me over Zoom. I kept it simple, stuck to facts. Delia was invited, declined. Brock's lawyer sent the network a cease and desist. They aired it anyway. That night, I sat on my RV's fold-out steps, watching the construction site. Silent now. No work lights, no nail guns. Just empty frames against the winter sky. It felt like the quiet before a thunderstorm. Week 38. I found out someone had filed a lien against my property. $47,000 for unpaid grading and excavation services. The claimant was a company called Apex Land Solutions LLC, registered in Delaware. I'd never heard of them, never hired them, never signed anything. I called Jolene. "It's fake," she said immediately. "Classic stall tactic. They file a fraudulent lien, clouds your title even more, keeps you busy fighting on another front." She filed a motion to expunge it, said we could prove it was bogus, but it'd take time. Meanwhile, the lien sat there like a tumor. Couldn't refinance, couldn't sell. Not that I wanted to, but it was the principle. They were trying to drown me in paperwork. Death by 1,000 legal cuts. I was sitting in my RV that night, staring at the lien notice, when my phone rang. Fire marshal, guy named Kowalski. "Mr. Thornhill, we need to talk about your barn fire." My pulse kicked up. "You ruled it accidental, 8 months ago." "I know, I was wrong." He asked to meet in person. I said yes. We met at a diner outside town, one of those places with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like it's been sitting since morning. Kowalski was mid-50s, gray mustache, looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "I'm retiring in 3 months," he said, "and I can't leave with this on my conscience." He pulled out a file. His original investigation notes from my barn fire. "I found accelerant traces near the electrical panel. Gasoline, maybe lighter fluid. That's arson, not an accident. But the sheriff's deputy, guy named Hayworth, friends with Brock Cranston, he pressured me to close the case fast. Said it was just an old barn, not worth the trouble." "Why are you telling me now?" "Because I looked the other way once, I'm not doing it again." He'd refiled the report. Official classification. Suspicious origin, investigation ongoing. Which meant my insurance claim, denied 8 months ago, would be reopened. And it meant potential criminal charges. "Who do you think did it?" I asked. "I don't know," Kowalski said. "But if I was a betting man, I'd look at who had the most to gain from you giving up." I drove home with the windows down, cold December air cutting through the cab. For the first time since the fire, I let myself feel the anger I'd been burying. Someone had burned my barn. Destroyed 40 years of tools, family photos, my father's old workbench, and they'd almost gotten away with it. Week 40. Deputy Hayworth, the one who'd buried the arson investigation, was up for re-election. His challenger was a former prosecutor named Callahan, no relation to Remy, but just as stubborn. Callahan made the barn fire a campaign issue. Ran ads asking why Hayworth had closed the case so fast, why he'd ignored the fire marshal's concerns, why he was so friendly with a developer who'd left angry contractors in 3 states. Hayworth lost, badly. The new sheriff reopened the investigation, week 42. Delia tried one last move. Anonymous mailers went out to every household in Clearfield Junction. Glossy, professional. Front side, my mugshot from a DUI arrest in 1989. I was 22, stupid. Paid my fine, never did it again. Backside, do you want a criminal controlling your neighborhood's future? No sender name, no disclaimer. Illegal under Texas election law, but nearly impossible to trace. It backfired. People saw it for what it was, desperation, a cheap shot, the kind of move you make when you've got nothing left. Comments online turned against Delia. He made a mistake 36 years ago. At least he learned, unlike some people. This is pathetic. Leave the man alone. I'd rather have an honest man with a past than a liar with a manicure. My ex-wife called. We hadn't spoken in months. I saw the mailer, she said. I'm sorry they did that. It's fine. It's not fine, but for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You always were too stubborn to quit. This time it sounded like a compliment. Week 44. Jolene deposed Delia. Court reporter, video camera, the whole setup. Delia wore a cream-colored blazer and too much perfume. Tried to look calm, but her hands kept fidgeting with her wedding ring. Jolene asked her about the right-of-way agreement. Did you verify Mr. Thornhill's deed before authorizing construction? I relied on documents provided by our attorney. So you didn't check? That's not my job. You're the HOA president. You signed the construction contract. Whose job is it? Delia didn't answer. Her lawyer told her to invoke the Fifth Amendment. Jolene smiled. Noted. The deposition transcript leaked. Probably someone in the court reporter's office. Remy published excerpts. Delia's reputation collapsed. 3 HOA board members resigned. 2 homeowners filed recall petitions. She deleted her Instagram. Week 46. Trial date set. January 14th. County Courthouse. Judge Calloway presiding. Former rancher herself. Reputation for hating slick city lawyers. Jolene called me the night we got the notice. You ready? I looked out at the construction site. 96 homes, most of them finished now. Driveways poured, landscaping in. For sale signs everywhere, but no buyers. Nobody wanted to touch a property with a clouded title. I'm ready, I said. January 14th, County Courthouse. I got there 30 minutes early. The courtroom was already packed. 80 people crammed into a space built for 50. Standing room only along the back wall. Local TV cameras set up in the corner. Judge Calloway had allowed them, said the public had a right to see how this played out. My side of the room, Jolene, Mabel from the Historical Society, Ernesto, Remy, a dozen folks from the co-op, people I'd known my whole life. Their side, Brock, Delia, 3 lawyers in suits that probably cost more than my truck. The lawyers had matching leather briefcases and the kind of confidence that comes from never losing. Judge Calloway walked in. 67, silver hair pulled back, reading glasses on a chain. She'd grown up on a ranch outside Fredericksburg, still had dirt under her nails from weekend work. The lawyer stood up a little straighter when she sat down. This isn't complicated, Jolene said in her opening. Mr. Thornhill owns 68 acres. The defendants built on 21 of those acres without permission, then lied about it. We'll prove it with deeds, surveys, and their own words. Cranston's lead lawyer, guy named Voss, slicked back hair, Dallas accent, argued that the 1962 reversal was ambiguous. Said the county never updated the plat, so his client relied on public records in good faith. Said my lawsuit was retaliatory because I'd refused a generous and fair buyout offer. Judge Calloway looked at him over her glasses. Counselor, are you arguing your client built 32 homes without checking who owned the land? Voss hesitated. We relied on title insurance, Your Honor. The same title company that's also a defendant in this case? Yes, Your Honor. She made a note. Didn't look impressed. Mabel testified first. Brought the original 1943 deed and the 1962 reversal in an archival box, handled them like they were made of glass. Explained how the digitization error had buried the reversal for 30 years. Voss tried to poke holes. Miss Ortiz, are you a licensed surveyor? No, sir. A lawyer? No, sir. So you're just a hobbyist who spends her weekends reading old papers. Mabel smiled. I've read every land grant in this county since 1880. I know this land better than you know your own driveway. The gallery laughed. Judge Calloway didn't gavel them down. Hatch, the surveyor, testified next, showed GPS boundary data, photos of the iron pins he'd planted, overlaid Cranston's site plan on the true property line. 32 homes are fully or partially on Mr. Thornhill's land, he said, some by 15 feet, some by 200. Ernesto testified about the sewer lines, showed the blueprints, the emails from Brock ordering cost-cutting measures. Explained why the system would fail within 5 years. Voss cross-examined him hard. You were fired from this project, correct? Yes, sir. For insubordination? For refusing to break the law. Judge Calloway leaned forward. Mr. Voss, move on. Then it was Delia's turn. She looked smaller on the stand. Her lawyer had told her to dress down. No jewelry, simple blouse, minimal makeup. She kept her hands folded in her lap. Jolene asked her about the Facebook post. You called Mr. Thornhill greedy, said he was blocking 96 families from their dreams. Did you know at the time that he legally owned the land? I was told the title was disputed. By whom? By my husband. Who's the developer? Yes. So you took his word without checking? Delia's voice went quiet. I trusted him. Jolene pulled up the recorded conversation, the one from the construction site, played it in the courtroom. Delia's voice clear as a church bell. Just build. The old man won't do anything. Delia closed her eyes. Did you say that, Miss Cranston? Yes. Did you believe Mr. Thornhill wouldn't fight back? Pause. Then, yes. Jolene didn't push further, didn't need to. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Jolene introduced evidence I'd forgotten I had. A voicemail from Brock, left back in August before the lawsuit even started. She played it on the courtroom speakers. Brock's voice, smooth and confident. Grady, Brock Cranston, look, I'll level with you. We might have jumped the gun on the survey. How about we settle this off the record? Cash, no paperwork. Call me. The courtroom went dead silent. Voss shot to his feet. Objection. Hearsay. Judge Calloway looked at him like he'd just said the earth was flat. It's a recorded admission by your client, counselor. Overruled. Brock slumped in his chair. Jolene rested. Judge Calloway took off her glasses, rubbed her eyes. I've seen a lot of land disputes in 30 years on this bench, she said. This isn't a dispute. This is trespassing, fraud, and arrogance. She looked at Brock and Delia. Mr. Thornhill owns 68 acres. You will remove any structures on his land within 90 days or pay him the full value of the improvements, $9.2 million. You'll also pay $400,000 in damages for the barn fire, lost agricultural income, and legal fees. She banged the gavel. Court adjourned. The gallery erupted. Not quite applause, but close. Judge Calloway didn't stop it. I walked outside into January sunlight. Reporters swarmed. Microphones, cameras, questions shouted over each other. Mr. Thornhill, what will you do with the land? Same thing my grandfather did. Take care of it? Delia slipped out a side door. A reporter caught her. Any comment? This is a miscarriage of justice. Then, under her breath but still caught on mic, stupid hick got lucky. The clip went viral by dinner. 10 days after the verdict, Brock Cranston filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Cranston Development, LLC collapsed. Assets frozen, including the 32 homes sitting on my land. A court-appointed trustee took over, started liquidating everything to pay creditors. The trustee called me on a Wednesday. Mr. Thornhill, I can offer you those 32 homes at cost. $4.1 million total, about half their market value. But I know that's still a lot of money. I didn't have $4 million, didn't have $400,000, but I had an idea. I called the organic co-op. Then I called 3 local business owners who'd supported me through the fight. People who were tired of watching developers turn Texas into a suburb of everywhere else. We formed a land trust. The co-op bought 15 of the homes, converted them into affordable housing for farm workers and young families. The 3 investors bought 10 as rentals, no HOA rules, just reasonable leases and tenants who wanted to live quiet. I kept 7, turned them into a farm stay retreat. People could rent them for weekends, learn about sustainable agriculture, eat food grown on the same land they were sleeping on. It wasn't what I'd planned, but it felt right. Delia didn't fare much better. An audit ordered by the remaining HOA members found $180,000 in missing funds. She'd been writing herself consulting fees for services that didn't exist. Embezzlement charges followed. She took a plea deal. 18 months probation, full restitution, resignation from every board she'd ever touched. Last I heard, she and Brock were divorced. He'd moved to Arizona trying to rebuild under a new company name. She'd moved back to Connecticut. The county commissioner who'd taken Brock's $50,000 donation voted out in the next election. The new commissioner pushed through a law requiring independent title verification before any rezoning that affects private land. A state legislator picked it up, introduced it as a bill. They called it Thornhill's Law. Passed the Texas House 8 months later. I rebuilt the barn in March. Insurance payout plus the settlement covered it, bigger than before. Solar panels on the roof, concrete floor that wouldn't burn. We threw a barn-raising party. 100 people showed up. BBQ, live music, kids running through the pasture. Felt like the old days, when neighbors still meant something. I used $50,000 from the settlement to start a scholarship fund, Thornhill Agricultural Scholarship, for local kids studying sustainable farming, land management, or rural law. First recipient, Ernesto's daughter. She got into Texas AANDM, wants to be a civil engineer like her dad. I deeded 20 acres to the Historical Society as a conservation easement. Can never be developed. They're restoring native prairie grasses, bringing back wildflowers. Mabel cried when I handed her the paperwork. I kept 48 acres for myself and the co-op. One evening in late April, I walked the fence line at sunset. Fireflies were starting to come out. First time I'd seen them in years. Maybe it was the lack of pesticides, or maybe the land was just healing. I could hear kids laughing from the co-op houses, smell mesquite smoke from someone's grill. My father's words came back to me. Don't let anybody make you small. I hadn't. Remy wrote a follow-up article 6 months later, How One Man's Stand Against an HOA Sparked a Movement. Turned out 3 other Texas landowners had used my case as precedent to fight eminent domain abuse. And Thornhill's Law was being studied in Oklahoma and New Mexico. A podcaster invited me on. I declined. Jolene went instead, became a minor celebrity in property rights circles. She deserved it. My daughter visited for Thanksgiving. Brought her family from Oregon. My grandson, 8 years old, all elbows and questions, walked the land with me. Is this ours forever? He asked. It's ours to take care of, I said. That's better than forever. 3 weeks ago, I got a letter from a woman in Louisiana. Said a pipeline company was trying to take her family's land through eminent domain. Asked if I could help. I smiled. Called Jolene. You busy? She laughed. When am I ever not? If you've got an HOA nightmare, a neighbor abusing power, a company stealing what's yours, don't give up. Document everything. Find good people. Fight smart, not just hard. And if this story helped, hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your state in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from, because stories like this, they need to be told, and they need to spread. Next time, pipeline company took my farm. I used a 200-year-old treaty to take it back. See you then.